The vase shattered before her words did. I don't even remember touching it, just the sound of glass breaking, the water spilling across the hardwood, and Renee's voice slicing through it. Cancel that party. The sentence hit harder than the crash. Her tone wasn't loud. It was deliberate, controlled, like someone firing a warning shot just to see how close they could aim to your heart. You'll embarrass us, she said, arms folded across her chest. We're not doing this with you. The florist froze mid-step, her hands still holding a bouquet of lilies meant for the table's centerpiece. She looked from me to my daughter, caught between duty and dread. I'm Marjorie Cole. And that was the moment I learned you don't have to bury a dream in a coffin. Sometimes your own child does it with a sentence. I didn't speak. I just bent down, picked up the broken pieces, and placed them gently in the trash. My fingers trembled, but I made sure she didn't see it. Behind me, Brian leaned against the doorway, phone in hand, pretending to scroll. His voice was calm, detached, almost rehearsed. Renee's right. Let it go, ma'am. It's time to move on. That ma'am cut like ice. I straightened, wiping water off my palms with the back of my sleeve. Move on from what? Renee sighed like patience was something she owned. From living in the past, from that old hall, and your little charity idea. People have moved on. Mama, you should too. Her words dripped sugar, but carried poison. The florist tried to speak. Mrs. Cole, I can. Leave it, I said softly. My voice didn't sound like mine anymore. Go ahead and leave it. When the door closed behind her, the air changed, thicker, quieter. Renee's reflection flickered in the glass cabinet across from me, shoulders stiff, expression cold. You don't understand how things look now, she said. That fundraiser, the guests, the church crowd, it's all just old-fashioned. You'll embarrass us. She said it again. Embarrass us. The words landed like a curse. I already sent the deposit. I murmured. I'll refund it. She snapped. It's paid in full. Brian finally looked up, jaw tightening. You can't be this stubborn. We're trying to protect you. I turned to face them both, the silence stretching so long it almost hummed. Protect me from what? Neither answered. So I smiled, small, deliberate, the kind of smile that hides fire behind its calm. All right. That was all I said. And that was all it took, because something in my voice made Renee flinch. She tried to speak again, but I was already walking out, purse in hand, shoes clicking like punctuation on polished floors. If you've ever had to stay silent while someone rewrote your intentions, go on and drop a heart in the comments for me. Some of us learned that dignity isn't loud. It's just patient enough to let the truth catch up. Outside, the air was heavy, thick with rain and humiliation. My car door creaked as I opened it. I sat there for a long moment, watching the house through the windshield, my daughter's shadow moving behind the curtains, her husband pacing like he was already rewriting the story. All right, I whispered again. It didn't sound like surrender. It sounded like the start of something I hadn't decided yet. When I got home, the house greeted me with its stillness. The table still held the stack of invitations, names of people who'd stood beside me when I had nothing. I ran my fingers over each one before tucking them into a drawer. Later, I opened my laptop to cancel the event. My cursor hovered over the button, but before I clicked it, an email notification popped up, bright, insistent, alive. Catering confirmation, event date approved. I froze. No one was supposed to confirm anything. Not after I canceled every deposit, every call, every dream. Someone had gone ahead with the party, and they were using my name. By morning, the lilies on my counter had started to lean like even the flowers were tired of pretending something good was coming. I set them aside. One by one, their scent already turning heavy and sweet, the kind that reminds you of funerals. The word, all right, still echoed through the house, softer now, like it wanted to test if it could mean something other than surrender. I took down the garland I'd hung above the mantel 2 days ago, thin gold ribbon woven through photos of my husband, Robert Cole. He'd always said, "Pride don't need to shout, Marjorie, it just stands up straight." But even pride gets lonely. I kept hearing his voice as I folded each ribbon carefully, not wanting to crease what little hope I had left. The knock at the door came gentle. "You got a minute, Miss Marjorie?" It was Lorraine Mills from next door, retired nurse, the kind of woman who always smells faintly of baby powder and peppermint oil. She carried a bouquet of mixed flowers wrapped in grocery paper. They were giving these away after the church potluck. Thought they might brighten your table. I smiled small. "You must have known I needed color today." She stepped inside like she always did, familiar enough to skip formalities, but respectful enough not to look around too much. "You cancel that party I heard about?" Something like that. She poured herself tea without asking, and I didn't stop her. We sat in that quiet rhythm only women of a certain age understand, where words rest longer before they're spoken. "I saw how that girl of yours talked to you the other week." She finally said, stirring sugar slow, "Sometimes silence ain't weakness. You know, it's armor. You don't owe anybody noise." That hit deep, because silence had been my only weapon that night, and somehow it had protected me better than pride ever did. I nodded. "I just hope Renee finds peace in whatever she's chasing." Lorraine chuckled. "Peace don't live where shame pays rent." We laughed, soft but real, and for a moment I forgot the ache. When she left, I walked through each room, collecting the small traces of what that party could have been. The folded tablecloths, the photo frames, the place cards I'd handwritten in blue ink. I stacked them neatly in a box marked "Someday," taped it shut, and slid it under the guest bed. The house felt cleaner afterward, but not lighter. There's a kind of grief that doesn't cry. It just rearranges furniture until the pain looks organized. By late afternoon, I sat at the kitchen table with my cup of tea gone cold. The air conditioner hummed like an old lullaby. I picked up my phone out of habit, scrolling through the weather, the local news, the emails I'd been avoiding. Then I saw it, a bank notification blinking in red. "Account access alert. Foundation fund accessed by authorized user." I froze. The only authorized users were me and Brian Banks, the son-in-law who once called my husband's charity a sweet, sentimental hobby. My stomach dropped so fast it almost knocked the air out of me. I clicked the message open, hands shaking more from disbelief than fear. The timestamp read 4:13 p.m. 10 minutes ago. 10 minutes ago, someone had reached into the only piece of my husband still breathing through numbers and paper. I whispered the word again, quieter this time. "All right." But it didn't sound the same. It scraped on the way out. For a long minute, I just sat there listening to the house. The refrigerator clicked. The clock ticked. The world moved like nothing had happened. Except something had. Something small, deliberate, and dressed up to look like permission. I reached for my phone again and stared at the contact list, at Renee Banks's name glowing back at me, framed by that smiling picture she took in front of their new car. My thumb hovered above the call button, but I didn't press it. Not yet. If silence was armor, I wasn't done wearing it. Because the aftertaste of, all right, wasn't peace anymore. It was warning. The phone rang right as I was wiping down the kitchen counter. It was the kind of ring that sounds too polite to mean trouble. I didn't rush. Let it hum through the second tone, the third, before I finally answered. Marjorie? Hey, it's Brian. His voice was calm, too calm. That salesman kind of smoothness he used when trying to sell comfort as sincerity. I was just checking on you, he said. Renee told me you've been quiet. I smiled into the silence. Quiet's not always a bad thing. He chuckled like I'd said something charming. Of course. I just wanted to make sure everything's okay with the foundation accounts. I got an alert earlier, thought maybe you made some changes. He said it so light I almost missed the weight of it, but I've lived too long to mistake curiosity for kindness. I haven't touched anything, I said, keeping my tone even. Strange. Maybe it's a system glitch. Or maybe one of the transfers from last month just finalized. He was fishing, and I let him. Could be. A pause stretched out between us. Thin, polite, dangerous. I can help review it if you like. He added, wouldn't want any confusion with those old charity accounts. They can get tricky. That word, old, landed heavy, like he'd already written my work off as outdated. I'll look into it. I said, perfect. Glad we're on the same page. When he hung up, I stood there for a moment, staring at the phone, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the ticking clock. Both steady, both real, unlike the tone he'd just used. I didn't know yet if it was guilt or greed that made his voice so gentle, but something in me whispered that call wasn't about care. It was about cover. Later that afternoon, I drove to the bank. The air inside smelled faintly of coffee and paper dust. My friend Janine, the senior clerk who'd handled our accounts for years, looked up when she saw me and smiled the kind of smile reserved for women who know more than they can say. Marjorie Cole, she greeted softly. I was wondering when I'd see you. She lowered her voice. You might want to check the signature logs. Some transactions look unusual. The system's flagging cross-authorizations. Might just be overlap, but something feels off. Cross what? She glanced around the lobby. Means somebody's signing off in two places under different clearances. It's not technically illegal if access overlaps, but it's messy. My throat went dry. Was the name on it mine? Janine's eyes said more than her words. One of them. The floor under me didn't move, but it felt like it had. Print me a statement. I asked. She hesitated. You sure you want that paper trail yet? I nodded. I want to see everything. As the printer started, the sound filled the space like a heartbeat. Pages slid out slow, line by line, each one another layer of truth pressing through denial. When she handed them over, her hand brushed mine, steadying, not pitying. Whatever this is, take your time, she whispered. I tucked the pages into my bag and thanked her quietly. By the time I got back to my car, the heat had settled over everything, the kind that makes you feel trapped even with the windows down. I didn't open the envelope. Not yet. Some truths don't need to be read to be known. That evening, I made myself dinner I didn't taste and sat on the sofa, scrolling through my phone. Then I froze. Renee's name lit up my feed, bright, smiling, flawless. She just posted photos from a dinner labeled "Family Night, Just Us." My chest went tight. Same weekend the party was meant to happen. Same date as the catering confirmation. The photo showed Renee, Brian, and a table full of laughing guests. I zoomed in. On the napkins, gold lettering that read Cole Foundation fundraiser. I felt my stomach twist. The words glowed like betrayal dressed in celebration. The party was still happening, and my name was still on it. I told myself it was just a quick stop, drop the small wrapped gifts on the porch, and leave. Nothing more. No conversations, no confrontations. Just a mother trying to keep dignity intact. But the closer I got to Renee's street, the tighter the air felt. It wasn't nerves, it was instinct. That sixth sense women earn from years of biting their tongue in the name of peace. The house looked as polished as ever, all beige stone and glass, a monument to Brian's need for appearances. I parked at the curb and sat for a moment, my fingers resting on the paper bag beside me. Inside were small favors I'd ordered weeks ago for the canceled party. Engraved keychains with Cole Foundation etched in silver. A quiet tribute that never got its day. The front gate buzzed open before I even touched the intercom. The housekeeper, a young woman with sharp eyes and a practiced smile, opened the door just enough to speak. "Oh, Mrs. Cole, Mr. and Mrs. Banks aren't home right now. They're traveling." Traveling. The lie came too smooth, like it had been rehearsed. I nodded anyway, unwilling to expose the deceit. "Just tell them I stopped by." I placed the bag by the door, thanked her softly, and turned to leave. But before I reached the steps, a sound cut through the quiet. Laughter. Not distant, not imagined. Renee's laughter, short, high, familiar. The kind she used when she wanted people to know she was confident, even when she wasn't. It spilled through the hall like perfume, light and deliberate. The housekeeper's smile faltered. "That's from the TV," she said quickly. I met her eyes. Then the TV sounds a lot like my daughter. Her lips parted, but no words came. I let it go. What could she say? Lies work best when the truth's too painful to argue. I stepped back onto the porch, pausing under the framed doorway. Through the tinted glass, I could see shadows move, figures gathered around a dining table. Music faint but clear, silverware clinking against fine plates. It was all there. The dinner, the laughter, the warmth, and me outside. For a second, I thought about knocking, not out of pride, but out of memory. I wanted to remind her of the girl who once begged me to chaperone her school dance because she was scared. The other kids would tease her thrift store dress. That night, I'd stayed by the wall the whole time, pretending to take photos just so she wouldn't feel alone. She'd smiled at me then, shy, grateful, unashamed. Now she laughed behind a closed door, afraid I'd embarrass her again, this time for simply existing. Shame runs deep when it's taught young, and I'd spent too many years teaching Renee to protect her image instead of her heart. That was my mistake, raising a daughter who learned how to shine but not how to stay grounded. A gust of wind lifted the hem of my dress, tugging at the gift bag. One of the keychains slid out, clinking against the porch tile. The engraved letters caught the porch light, Cole Foundation. I left it there. Some symbols deserve to speak louder than words ever could. Back in my car, I watched the front door close tight again. It made no sound, but somehow the quiet hurt more than shouting ever would. I started the engine, the dashboard clock blinking 8:47 p.m., and drove away slowly. Halfway down the street, my phone vibrated against the console. A notification flashed across the screen. Local news alert. Financial firm under federal review for accounting irregularities. The company name hit like cold water. Banks and Associates Consulting. Brian's firm. I pulled over, heart pounding. The irony was bitter enough to taste. They'd closed their door on me to protect their image, and now the world might be about to open theirs. The article headline refreshed once more. Pending audit underway. I stared at the glowing screen until the light dimmed on its own. For the first time that night, the silence inside the car didn't feel lonely. It felt like the beginning of something shifting. The phone started early that morning. Once. Twice. Then again, like it had learned my schedule. I let it ring, watched the screen light up with Renee's name, and waited for it to go dark again. It took 3 missed calls before I picked up. Mama. Her voice was syrupy, almost cheerful, like it was auditioning for forgiveness. I just wanted to check on you. How are you? I'm fine, baby. The pause on the other end stretched longer than comfort allowed. Then came the nervous laugh. You sound tired. You been resting? Plenty, I said. You. She exhaled too quickly. Oh, I'm good. Busy, Brian's been swamped since. She stopped catching herself. Since work's been hectic. But we're fine. Totally fine. People who are fine don't say it twice. That's good to hear, I said, folding laundry on the couch, pretending my heart wasn't scanning her tone for cracks. Mama, listen, did you, see anything strange with your foundation account? I think the bank might have sent something by mistake. There it was, the politeness sliding just enough to show its panic underneath. I haven't checked today, I said, but I can. Oh, no need, she said too fast. Brian's handling it. He just wanted to be sure everything's smooth. I set another folded towel on the pile, pressing it flat. Tell him I said hello. I will. Another pause. Mama, you're not mad, are you? About the other week. I've been thinking, I said quietly, and sometimes quiet helps a person see who's speaking from love and who's just speaking loud. The silence on her end tightened. I could almost hear her swallow. We just wanted to help. I know, baby. When we hung up, the air in the house felt heavier, like her voice had left behind humidity instead of comfort. A few hours later, I went to church for the midweek gathering. The sanctuary smelled like lemon oil and hymn books, that scent that never changes no matter how many years pass. Lorraine Mills met me at the door, fanning herself with a folded program. Child, you look like somebody who's learning the art of silence, she said. I smiled. It's a lesson I never planned to study. She laughed, looping her arm through mine. Sometimes the Lord hides power in quiet women, so the world can underestimate and long enough to get surprised later. We sat together through prayer, and when the choir started, I didn't sing. I just listened to the harmony, to the space between notes, to the way peace could sit on your shoulders even when chaos lived in your phone. After service, Lorraine pressed a hand to my arm. You keep your stillness, Marjorie. Don't rush to fix nobody's noise. Let them wear themselves out first. That night, back home, the phone started again. Not calls this time. Messages. one after another, all from Renee. Mama, please call me when you can. Brian said he might need your input. It's just a quick signature thing, nothing major. I read them all and didn't reply. The stillness Lorraine talked about felt like armor now, polished by every unanswered ring. Then, just past 10, a new sound cut through the silence. A voicemail alert. I tapped play, expecting Renee's voice. But it wasn't hers. It was Brian. His tone was tight, words packed with forced calm. Marjorie, hey, it's Brian. Sorry to bother you so late, but we might need your signature to fix this mess. Call me first thing tomorrow, please. It's urgent. I replayed it twice. The words, this mess, echoing through the empty kitchen. Outside, the wind pushed against the window like it wanted to listen in. I stood there, phone in hand, realizing something had shifted. The balance, the pretense, maybe even the truth itself. Because when people who once spoke with authority start saying please, it means the storm they built is finally circling back. By morning, I'd replayed Brian's voicemail enough times to memorize the rhythm of his panic. Each word trembled beneath that polished tone. He wore like armor. It wasn't apology. It was desperation dressed as professionalism. I didn't call back. Instead, I showered slow, made oatmeal, and let the day unfold at its own pace. If they were rushing, I needed to move slower. By 9, I was parked outside the bank. The air smelled of wet asphalt and roasted coffee from the shop across the street. Inside, the lobby hummed with quiet transactions, fingers tapping keyboards, papers sliding polite greetings. I spotted Janine behind her glass cubicle and gave a small wave. She mouthed, "Come in," before finishing with another customer. When she finally turned to me, her smile faltered. "Marjorie, I was hoping you'd come back soon." Her tone carried that mixture of caution and care that tells you something's not just wrong, it's ongoing. "Can we freeze the foundation account?" I asked, temporarily, until I understand what's happening. She blinked, surprised but respectful. "You sure?" That could block outgoing transactions, including theirs. "That's the point." She nodded, typing quickly. "I'll need your authorization, just a signature and ID." As I signed, she leaned closer. "Between you and me, Brian's been calling around here a lot, asking questions about verification codes and donor ledgers." It raised a flag. My stomach tightened, but my voice stayed steady. Then maybe it's time we both stop answering him. When it was done, Janine handed me a stamped copy. "It's frozen as of now. No one touches that account until you say so." I folded the paper carefully and slipped it into my purse. "Thank you." She smiled faintly. "You're doing the right thing, Marjorie. Sometimes waiting is the loudest answer." Her words lingered as I stepped back into the parking lot. The sun was higher now, but the world felt quieter, more deliberate. I didn't go home right away. Instead, I drove to the community center, small red brick building, peeling paint, but still standing strong like an old friend who refuses to be forgotten. Inside, volunteers buzzed around sorting boxes for the upcoming food drive. That's where I met Tasha, a young mother sorting canned goods with her baby strapped to her chest. She looked tired in that way women do when every decision costs something. "You handle numbers pretty good," I told her, noticing her stack of donation forms neatly labeled. She smiled shyly. "Used to do accounting before I had my son. Been trying to brush up again. Maybe start freelancing." "Come by on Saturdays," I said without thinking. I could use some help organizing the foundation books. Teach you a few shortcuts if you want. Her eyes brightened. You do that. Someone once taught me. I'm just passing it on. It wasn't charity. It was purpose finding me again. For the first time in weeks, I felt a shift, not loud, not triumphant, but steady. Teaching her reminded me of what mattered before money, pride, or appearances ever entered the room. Maybe waiting wasn't punishment. Maybe it was preparation. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table again, going through old ledgers with a calmer hand. The phone sat face down beside me, silent but heavy. I could almost feel Renee's anxiety pressing through it, searching for cracks in my resolve. I wouldn't give her one. Halfway through a donation record, my screen lit up with a notification. Not a call this time. News alert. Banks and Associates loses major client amid financial review. The headline glowed blue against the white screen, sharp as truth. A smaller line appeared below it. Sources confirm potential lawsuits pending. I leaned back slowly, breathing out through my nose. No anger, no victory dance. Just a quiet acknowledgement of the balance starting to tilt. For once, I didn't feel like the one waiting. It was their turn now. The silence hit before the scandal did. No texts, no updates. The family group chat that used to hum with photos, reminders, and shallow check-ins now sat dead on my phone screen. Unread, untouched, unloved. The last message was mine. Dinner's ready if anyone's coming by. Sent 2 weeks ago. Seen by everyone. Replied to by no one. Now, not even the typing bubbles showed life. Just stillness. I'd already seen the news earlier that morning. Banks and Associates losing another client. The same headline bouncing from Facebook to local talk radio. No one mentioned Brian by name yet, but I knew how stories grow legs before names grow teeth. By afternoon, I was cleaning the living room out of habit. Not purpose, dusting picture frames that didn't need dusting, straightening coasters no one used. When you live long enough, you learn how to make silence look productive. My phone buzzed suddenly, a sound so sharp in that quiet it made me jump. It wasn't Renee. It was my nephew Calvin. Aunt Marge, his message read, "You okay? Don't say nothing in the chat. Just checking." I frowned, typed back slowly, "I'm fine." "Why?" He called instead of replying. "I didn't want to text this," he said, his voice low. "You might not want to go on Facebook today." "What's going on?" He hesitated. Folks in Renee's circle running their mouths. Saying the audit at Brian's job got bigger. Some folks throwing around the word embezzlement. Her old coworker posted something slick like, "Money don't clean shame." It's getting messy. I pressed my lips together. And Renee, quiet, deleted her socials. Folks saying she's embarrassed to be seen right now. The ache that settled in my chest wasn't pride. It was grief for how far she'd fallen from truth. There was a time she'd tell me everything, how she cried after her first college presentation, how nervous she was before meeting Brian's parents. Now, strangers knew more about her life than her own mother. "Thanks, baby," I said gently. "Don't worry about me. I'm fine." After we hung up, I sat by the window with my tea and watched the neighborhood light change. Kids rode bikes past the mailboxes, their laughter sharp and clean, untouched by adult pretense. I envied that purity, how simple trust used to be before money and status made people rewrite the definition of love. By evening, my phone stayed still again. I checked the group chat, once more out of habit. The silence stared back, colder this time. I could picture Renee sitting somewhere in that big beige house, scrolling, deleting, pretending. Brian pacing, phone glued to his hand, watching everything unravel faster than he could control it. The quiet wasn't peace anymore. It was pressure. At church the next day, Lorraine leaned over after prayer and whispered, "They're saying the news might go national. You holding up?" I nodded. "I'm learning to wait." She squeezed my hand. "Wait with your chin up." Then. That night, the house felt different, still but not empty. I cooked stew for one, turned off the TV, and let the sound of the clock fill the space. I didn't call Renee. I didn't text. The waiting was no longer passive. It was deliberate. Just past 10, the quiet broke. The doorbell rang. Not a polite press, a desperate one. I walked slowly to the door, my heart steady but curious. Through the frosted glass, I saw a shape, shoulders slumped, hair loose, posture heavy with something deeper than fatigue. When I opened the door, Renee stood there, eyes swollen, makeup streaked, clothes wrinkled like she'd been holding herself together until she couldn't anymore. "Hi, Mama," she whispered, voice cracked and small. Behind her, the night air carried a chill and the faint sound of wind brushing through the trees, that kind of quiet that comes right before truth asks to be let in. I almost didn't open the door. The knock came soft at first, then again, 3 times, hesitant but insistent, like guilt trying to remember its manners. When I peeked through the window, I saw Renee standing on the porch, clutching a folder against her chest like a shield. The porch light caught the sheen of her tears. "Please, Mama," she said as soon as I cracked the door. "Can I come in?" Her voice had shrunk into something fragile, the kind I hadn't heard since she was a girl afraid of thunderstorms. I stepped aside, letting her in without a word. The clock on the wall ticked past 11, loud enough to measure every second between us. Renee looked around the house as if time itself had betrayed her. The same couch, the same faded rug, the same comfort she once called embarrassing. She sat down without invitation, setting the folder on her lap. "I know you've seen the news," she started, "but this isn't what it looks like. Brian he made some mistakes on paper. That's all. The auditors are confused. We just need to fix one form, and it'll go away." "Fix," I repeated quietly. She opened the folder and slid a few sheets toward me. Legal documents, clean print, unfamiliar wording. At the top, clarification of authorization for foundation transaction. "Brian said if you sign here," she said, pointing to the last page, "it'll prove the transfer was pre-approved. It's just a technicality." I looked at the line where my name was typed in neat black ink. The word authorization repeated too many times. The phrasing blurred between agreement and confession. Did a lawyer draft this? I asked. "Brian did," she said too quickly. "He's been through this before." "Mama, please just trust me. We're family." The lamplight stretched her shadow long across the table, trembling as she pushed the pen closer to me. I picked it up, rolled it between my fingers, then set it down again. "What happens if I sign this, Renee?" "Nothing bad," she said, voice cracking. It shows continuity. You're not in trouble. You never will be." I looked at her hands. Perfect nails, shaking slightly. She was scared, but not of losing me. Scared of losing the life she'd built on borrowed confidence. Outside, a faint movement caught my eye. Across the street, Mrs. Whitlow, the old widow who spent nights behind her lace curtains, had her lamp on. Her silhouette shifted slightly, her phone held up. Watching. Recording. That woman missed nothing. I turned back to my daughter. You came here at 11 at night to ask me to sign something that could tie my name to your husband's mess. You understand how that sounds. Renee's eyes filled. I didn't know where else to go. Her voice trembled, but her words still carried that hint of command, the kind learned from living beside a man like Brian. I took the papers, folded them neatly, and handed them back. All right, I said softly. She blinked. So you'll sign? Not tonight. Her face hardened, grief giving way to anger. Mama, you're making this harder than it needs to be. Maybe hard is what truth feels like when you've lived too long with easy lies. She stood abruptly, clutching the folder to her chest. You'll regret making this harder, she shouted, voice sharp enough to slice through the quiet. The words echoed through the living room, bounced off walls that had once held lullabies and laughter. She turned, stormed out, and the door slammed behind her, rattling the picture frames. Outside, the porch light flickered once before settling. Through the curtain, I saw Mrs. Whitlow's lamp go out, her shadow stepping away from the window. I stood alone in the silence, the air thick with the smell of Renee's perfume and something else, fear, maybe, or finality. The clock struck midnight. I didn't move, because when a storm finally breaks at your doorstep, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse to step outside. Sunday sunlight had a way of making everything look gentler than it really was. The church pews gleamed like honey, the air full of starch and perfume, and for a few minutes it almost felt like the world still had room for peace. I sat near the back, the same row I'd chosen since Robert passed, close enough to hear the choir, but far enough to leave unnoticed if my heart got heavy. The sanctuary was full that morning, whispers moving faster than the fans spinning overhead. I caught snippets of them as people passed, news, speculation, concern disguised as curiosity. My name hadn't entered their mouths yet, but I could feel it hovering near the edges. Deacon Harold, a quiet man with a spine like an oak tree, approached after the sermon. He didn't shake hands. He just leaned in, his voice low enough to hide inside the hymn, still echoing. Sister Marjorie, he said softly, you might want to get ahead of this before it gets ahead of you. I blinked. Ahead of what? He hesitated, eyes darting toward the stained glass window. That audit they're talking about on the news. Word is, your name's listed on some of those foundation papers. Folks saying it's cosigner authorization. They'll be digging into everything soon. If your records are clean, and I know they are, you make sure you can prove it. His words settled in my chest like stones dropped in water. Slow, heavy ripples. Who told you that? Someone close to the finance board. He whispered. And they're not trying to hurt you, just giving you time. I nodded slowly. Thank you, Deacon. I'll take care of it. He squeezed my shoulder before walking off, leaving the scent of aftershave and worry behind him. The choir began again just then, their voices folding through the air like a bomb. The song was Robert's favorite, Great is Thy Faithfulness. The notes carried me back to the day. He told me starting a foundation wasn't about money but about dignity. If you don't build something good in your own name, he used to say, someone else will use it for something bad. Now, I understood just how right he'd been. I closed my eyes and whispered a prayer, not for revenge, not for shame to find my daughter, but for light to fall where truth was hiding. I didn't ask God to fix it. I asked him to expose it. After service, Lorraine found me in the hallway. Her eyes were sharp, voice low. "You okay?" "I will be," I said. "Then you better keep every paper you ever signed," she muttered. "The devil wears business suits these days." That earned the faintest smile from me. And sometimes perfume. She gave a small nod. "Then wear your faith like armor. Honey, it's thicker than silk." By the time I reached home, the whispers had already turned into headlines. My phone buzzed with alerts before I could even pour coffee. I hesitated before opening the first one, heart steady but cautious. The headline stared back in bold black letters. "Consultant couple accused of misusing charity funds." A photo followed, Brian in his pressed suit, Renee standing beside him. Head tilted down like shame was finally teaching her posture. The article's first line made my stomach twist. "Investigators are reviewing records tied to the Cole Foundation, co-founded by the mother of the accused." I read it again, slower this time, each word slicing deeper. They hadn't said I was guilty. They hadn't even accused me. But they'd tied my name to their fall, threaded me into their scandal like I'd sewn it myself. I set the phone down carefully, afraid the tremor in my hand might make the story more real. The house was quiet except for the ticking clock, steady and merciless. I whispered the only word I could find, the one that had followed me through every humiliation, every lie, every test. "All right." But this time, it didn't sound like surrender. It sounded like readiness. It had been exactly 2 weeks since the words "cancel that party" split my living room in half. 2 weeks since my daughter's voice turned my silence into strength. The world outside had grown loud in that time. Reporters circling, phones buzzing, voices clawing for sound bites. But inside my small house, quiet ruled. That morning, I stepped into the backyard with my gardening gloves and a bowl of seeds. The air smelled like wet earth and sunlight, peace layered over memory. Gardening had always been my prayer, without words. It didn't need verses or voices, just rhythm, breath, and dirt that didn't lie. The phone buzzed on the porch railing behind me. Once, twice, a third time. I didn't turn around. Let it ring. I dug a small trench along the fence, my fingers steady even as the world I'd once built for my daughter seemed to crumble in the distance. The soil gave way easily. Some things do when you stop forcing them to stay hard. The bees hovered over the marigolds, the same flowers I'd planted for Robert years ago. He used to call them little suns. I hummed one of his old tunes, letting it wrap around the still air, something about staying steady when storms pretend they'll never end. Another vibration from the porch. Then another. When I finally checked the phone, I saw a cluster of missed calls. Renee, 12, Brian, 8, unknown numbers, 4. No voicemails this time, just persistence, like panic had fingers. I scrolled past them and tapped the weather app instead. The forecast promised rain by Thursday. That was all I cared to know. Inside, the TV murmured low, replaying the same story from the night before. Sources close to the investigation suggest that funds from the Cole Foundation were redirected for personal use. I muted it. Truth didn't need a narrator. Later that afternoon, Lorraine came by carrying sweet tea and quiet concern. She watched me trim the hedge and said, "You're calmer than I'd be with all this noise." I smiled, setting down the clippers. That's the thing about storms, Lorraine. The louder they get, the closer they are to passing. She nodded, impressed but worried. You think they'll stop calling? They'll stop when they realize silence ain't punishment. It's consequence. We sat under the oak tree for a while, sipping tea and listening to cicadas hum like old gossipers who'd run out of breath. By sunset, the sky turned the color of forgiveness. Soft gold, faint pink, almost tender. I watered the garden one last time, careful not to drown the roots. Everything thrives on balance, even healing. When I walked back inside, the phone was waiting on the kitchen table, screen lighting up every few seconds with desperation disguised as politeness. Renee again. Then a number I didn't know. Then a text from a journalist. Then silence. I poured myself a glass of water, sat at the table, and stared out the window. The garden looked peaceful under the porch light, like it had chosen not to care about the noise beyond the fence. The phone buzzed one more time. A new message from Renee. Please, Mom. They froze everything. We need your help. The words stayed on the screen, glowing faintly in the dark. I didn't respond. I didn't delete it either. I just stared until the light faded, then turned the phone face down. Because sometimes peace isn't found in what you say. It's found in what you choose not to answer. The morning started gray, the kind of gray that doesn't promise rain, just honesty. The phone lay face down beside my breakfast plate, silent for the first time in days. It felt almost polite, like even chaos had learned some manners. I poured my coffee, took a slow sip, and stared out the window at the backyard. The marigolds were in bloom again, Robert's little sons, bright and unbothered by human foolishness. The sight steadied me. When I finally picked up the phone, I didn't rush to open the messages. I already knew what they'd say. Renee's tone had changed overnight, from desperate to pleading to guilt-laced sweetness. I scrolled through her words like someone reading the same chapter of a book they'd already finished. Mama, please call me. Brian said they'll clear the audit if you confirm the transaction was authorized. They're freezing all accounts. It's just a form, not a big deal. We can't lose everything. Please, Mama. I started typing back. A long message full of the things I'd never said aloud. The heartbreak, the betrayal, the shame of raising a child who traded loyalty for appearances. I told her I'd spent my whole life trying to protect her, only to realize too late that protection and permission aren't the same thing. Then I stopped, read it again, and deleted every word. My thumb hovered over the screen for a long moment. I could almost hear Lorraine's voice in my head. Sometimes quiet is the only sermon folks remember. So I typed one line. I'm not available. Handle it yourselves. Then I pressed send. The message went through instantly. No confetti, no noise, just quiet confirmation. I set the phone down, finished my coffee, and let the air settle around me. The silence didn't feel cold this time. It felt earned. Just as I stood to rinse my cup, the house phone rang. I almost didn't answer, thinking it was another reporter. But when I picked up, a familiar voice met me on the other end. Mrs. Cole, this is Mr. Jenkins from the community hall. I smiled, remembering the man who'd slipped the deposit envelope back across the counter weeks ago when everything fell apart. Yes, Mr. Jenkins. How are you? I'm fine, ma'am. Listen, we still have your date open for next month. A few of the local sponsors heard what happened and offered to cover the costs. They said it's time we celebrate you and the foundation properly. If you're willing, we'd like to host the event again. Your way this time. For a second, my throat went tight. I had to grip the counter to steady myself. That's kind of you, I said softly. But I thought you returned the deposit. I did, he said. But some blessings find their way back when they belong. I let out a quiet laugh that turned into something close to a tear. All right then, let's do it. After I hung up, I sat at the kitchen table, letting the weight of it sink in. For weeks I'd been shrinking, retreating, letting their storm cast shadows over my peace. But that call felt like sunlight breaking through the blinds. Not loud, not triumphant, just steady. A few hours later, my phone buzzed again. I almost ignored it until I saw the headline flash across the screen. Banks and Associates founders resign to focus on family matters. The article showed a photo of Renee and Brian, standing close but looking in opposite directions. Her face looked older now, like she'd aged faster than the story could print. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just turned the phone face down and looked out the window. The marigolds swayed gently in the breeze, their golden heads nodding as if to say what I already knew. Peace isn't revenge. It's reclaiming your quiet and knowing they can't reach it anymore. The hall smelled exactly as I remembered, wood polish, faint lemon, and old community spirit. The kind of scent that carried history in it, the kind you couldn't buy or fake. When I stepped inside, sunlight from the high windows cut through dust like soft applause. Mr. Jenkins was already there, clipboard in hand. "Welcome back, Mrs. Cole," he said, smiling wide. "Feels right seeing you here again." I nodded, looking around at the familiar space, the stage, the long tables, the banner hooks still taped to the walls from last year's food drive. "It's been a long time coming," I said quietly. This time, he replied, "It's all in your name. No co-sponsors, no outsiders. Just the Marjorie Cole Foundation. That's what the donors insisted." For a moment, I had to steady my breath. Hearing my own name spoken without attachment, no daughter, no husband, no scandal, felt like being reintroduced to myself. He handed me a folder. "We'll finalize the new program list by Friday. Oh, and you've got a volunteer already waiting to meet you." I turned, and there she was, Tasha, the young mother I'd met at the community center weeks ago. Her smile was shy but sure, her baby now toddling beside her, clutching her skirt. "Miss Marjorie," she said softly, "I heard about the event and wanted to help. You taught me more in a few Saturdays than I learned in a year of night classes. I figured I could repay it with time." Her words landed gentle like the first note of a hymn. "You don't owe me anything, Tasha," I said. She shook her head. "That's exactly why I want to do it." We spent the afternoon sorting through decorations. Nothing fancy, just meaningful. Photographs of past volunteers, plaques of donors long gone, and handwritten thank you cards from families we'd once helped. The work felt sacred again. As we hung a banner, the hall lights flickered on one by one, bathing the room in a golden glow. It looked like resurrection. For the first time in months, laughter came easy. We teased about old church recipes and swapped stories about the kids who'd grown up on those summer lunches the foundation used to fund. When Tasha stepped out to take a call, I stood alone on the stage, gazing out over the empty chairs. I could almost see Robert standing in the back, arms crossed, that quiet pride in his eyes. "You were right," I whispered. "You said if the work was good, it would outlive the people who tried to bury it." Outside, I heard Tasha laughing with Mr. Jenkins, their voices carrying the lightness of people who still believe in fresh starts. I gathered the papers into neat stacks, slid the event checklist into my bag, and turned off the last set of lights. Before leaving, I took one last look at the banner stretched across the stage, rebuilding hope, a night of gratitude. The name underneath made my throat tighten, hosted by the Marjorie Cole Foundation. It didn't look grand. It looked honest. As I stepped into the evening air, the sky was painted deep orange, the kind that blurs between day and forgiveness. My car keys jingled softly as I unlocked the door. That's when I saw her, Renee's best friend, Candace, standing near the gate, holding an envelope against her chest. Her face carried that uneasy mix of loyalty and discomfort. "Mrs. Cole," she said, voice low, "she wanted you to have this." She held out the envelope with trembling fingers. I stared at it, the faint outline of handwriting visible through the paper. Renee's handwriting. The air thickened between us, heavy with things unsaid. I took the envelope slowly, the paper warm from her hand. Candace backed away, eyes glossy. She said, "You'd understand when you read it." Then she turned and walked off, heels clicking against the pavement, each step fading into the hum of the streetlights flickering on above. I stood there alone, envelope in hand, the last traces of sunlight dying across the hall windows. For a long moment, I didn't move, because sometimes the hardest part of forgiveness isn't opening what's been handed to you. It's deciding whether you should. I didn't open the envelope that night. I set it on the counter beside the kettle and just stared at it like it might tell me what kind of pain lived inside if I gave it enough silence. The handwriting on the front was unmistakable. Renee's, careful but rushed, as if she'd written it while her hands were shaking. Morning light crept through the kitchen window before I finally tore the flap. The first page was folded twice, tear stains wrinkling the corners. "Mama, I don't know where to start. I'm sorry feels too small for what I did. I keep trying to write around my shame, but it follows every word." I swallowed hard, reading slowly. Her voice played in my head, softer than it had been in years. "Brian's gone. He left 2 days ago after the firm collapse. I told him I'd stand by him, but when the headlines came, he turned on me, said I ruined him. I don't even have the strength to defend myself anymore." The next paragraph bled regret across the lines. "I lost the baby, Mama, the stress, the fear. I don't even know when it happened. The doctor said my body just gave out. Maybe that was God's way of giving me space to see who I've become. I'm sorry I pushed you away. You never embarrassed me. I just couldn't stand seeing the version of myself reflected in your eyes. You were everything I pretended to be, decent, respected, content. I thought money would make me feel safe. It only made me smaller." I stopped reading there for a moment, pressing my hand over my chest to keep my breathing steady. The house was quiet except for the faint tick of the kitchen clock. The ache that spread through me wasn't anger anymore. It was something heavier, something that came from remembering who she was before pride built her walls. I turned the page. I don't expect forgiveness. I just need you to know I finally see it. All of it. The party, the foundation, the silence. You were teaching me something I was too proud to learn out loud. I wish I'd listened sooner. The last line was short, fragile. "I love you, Mama. Please don't stop believing I can come back from this." By the time I finished, my hands were trembling. I folded the letter carefully, slid it back into the envelope, and laid it on the table like something sacred. Later that afternoon, I drove to the church. Pastor Glenn, my old minister, was in his office straightening him books. He looked up when he saw me and smiled gently. Haven't seen you in a while, Sister Marjorie. Life's been noisy, I said. He gestured for me to sit. I handed him the letter. She's sorry, I whispered, but I don't know what to do with that. I don't want to punish her, but I don't want to be fooled again. He read quietly, nodding as his eyes moved across the page. When he finished, he placed the letter between us and said, "Forgiveness and enablement are neighbors, but they don't live in the same house. You can open the door to mercy without letting the same hurt move back in." I stared at him, words catching in my throat. So I can forgive her without trusting her again? He smiled. Exactly. Forgiveness frees you. Trust is her work to rebuild. The truth in that sentence hit harder than I expected. I didn't cry. I just breathed long, deep, and steady, like peace was finally something I could hold without it slipping away. As I left the church, the choir was rehearsing inside. The hymn was, "It is well with my soul." I lingered by the doorway, listening, and for the first time in a long time, the words felt true. When I got home, the sun was low, the house still. I set the letter on my nightstand beside Robert's photo and whispered, "She's learning, baby. So, am I?" Just as I turned to switch off the lamp, my phone buzzed on the dresser. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. "Mrs. Cole," a male voice said, "This is Investigator Hollis from the State Auditor's Office. We're closing the file on the Cole Foundation audit, but before we finalize, we'll need your statement tomorrow morning." I froze, the calm shifting into something sharp. "Statement?" I asked quietly. "Yes, ma'am. It's just procedure. You've been listed as a key witness." The line clicked off before I could speak again. I looked toward the envelope on the nightstand, Renee's apology glinting under the lamp. Peace was still in the room, but it had changed shape. Tomorrow, silence would have to speak again. The state building smelled like paper and polished tile. Sterile, quiet, full of people who spoke softly but carried power in their pens. I arrived 10 minutes early, wearing my navy dress and small pearl earrings, the ones Robert bought me our first year of marriage. They reminded me of calm. The receptionist greeted me with a polite smile. "Mrs. Cole, they're ready for you." Inside, 3 investigators sat around a long table, folders open, eyes tired but not unkind. The man in the center, Investigator Hollis, gestured toward the chair across from him. "Thank you for coming, ma'am. We appreciate your cooperation." I sat down, placed my purse on the table, and folded my hands. "You said you needed my statement." He nodded. "Yes, ma'am. And any documents related to your foundation's finances over the past 2 years." I reached into my purse and pulled out a thick envelope, copies of every ledger, donation receipt, and authorization form Janine had helped me gather. I slid them across the table. "You'll find everything you need here. Every dollar that came in and every dollar that went out." They flipped through the pages, eyes moving fast. The woman beside him, a younger auditor with sharp features, looked up first. "These are meticulous," she said, almost surprised. "I keep my books the way I kept my promises." I replied, "Straight." A faint smile crossed Hollis's face. "We wish more people did, Mrs. Cole. This will help us close the audit cleanly." For the next half hour, they asked questions, dates, approvals, transaction codes. I answered each one clearly, no tremor in my voice. Every sentence felt like reclaiming a piece of myself that had been dragged through their mistakes. When it was done, Hollis leaned back, closing the file. You've been cleared of all connection to the misused funds. The Foundation's account will be reinstated this week. You're officially in the clear. I exhaled slowly, feeling something leave my chest. Something heavy I hadn't realized I'd been carrying since the day Renee said, "Cancel that party." "Thank you," I said quietly, not just for clearing me, but for listening. He nodded. We don't often see people handle chaos with this much composure. You should be proud. Pride's never been the goal. I said, peace has. He extended his hand. Then I hope you have plenty of it from here on out. When I stepped outside, the sunlight hit me square in the face, bright and honest. For once, I didn't shield my eyes. I just stood there, letting it warm my skin. Later that afternoon, I stopped by the small cafe near the church. The barista recognized me from the newspaper headline that morning. The woman who chose dignity, how Marjorie Cole cleared her name. I'd read the article over breakfast. It was respectful, measured. They quoted a line I hadn't realized I'd spoken to the reporter last week. When you stop defending what's right, you make room for what's wrong. The words felt truer now than when I'd said them. At the cafe window, I watched cars pass, people laughing, life moving forward like nothing had broken. That's the secret about storms. They make the world seem still until you notice how it keeps turning anyway. When I got home, the house greeted me the same way it always had, quiet but alive. The marigolds outside had grown taller, their orange petals catching the sunset like tiny flames. I poured tea, sat by the window, and finally let myself breathe without fear of interruption. Then, the phone lit up on the table beside me. Renee Banks. Her name glowed steady on the screen, waiting. I stared at it for a long time. Not with anger, not even sadness, just understanding. The phone buzzed again, insistent, hopeful, maybe desperate. I reached for it, then stopped halfway. Instead, I whispered the words that had carried me through everything, soft, firm, final. All right. And I let it ring. The night the hall lights returned, the air itself seemed to hum. Strings of gold bulbs lined the ceiling, glowing warm against the polished floors. People filled every seat, their laughter rising and falling like an old hymn rediscovered. The community had shown up in full. Neighbors, church members, old friends who hadn't seen me since before the headlines. They called it a celebration of gratitude, but for me, it felt like resurrection. At the center of the stage stood a display of photographs. Robert's smile, our early food drives, the families who once stood in those same halls holding grocery boxes and hope in their hands. Beside them, a new banner, the Cole Foundation Scholarship Fund, in memory of a legacy rebuilt. When the lights dimmed for the opening speech, Mr. Jenkins introduced me with a voice thick with pride. Tonight, he said, we honor not just service, but perseverance. Mrs. Marjorie Cole reminded this town that dignity never needs to shout. The applause started slow, then swelled until the sound wrapped around me. I rose from my chair and walked to the podium, the click of my heels echoing in the hall that had once held silence and shame. Thank you, I began steady but full. This community fed me long before I ever fed it. You gave me roots when pride made me think I could grow without them. Tonight isn't about what was lost. It's about what refused to stay buried. A soft murmur rippled through the room. Agreement, understanding, healing. Behind the crowd, I saw Tasha, the young mother I'd mentored, moving through tables with a clipboard, organizing volunteers like she'd been born to lead. Her little boy toddled after her, waving at anyone who looked his way. The sight nearly broke me with joy. The future had found its way home. As the choir began to sing softly, I stepped down from the podium and moved among the guests, shaking hands, exchanging hugs, collecting stories. Every voice carried warmth, not pity. Every smile reminded me that storms don't erase, sometimes they cleanse. And then, near the back doors, I saw her, Renee. She stood half in shadow, half in light, holding a bouquet of white lilies, the same kind that had wilted on my counter weeks ago. Her dress was simple, her posture unsure. She didn't try to push forward or make a scene. She just stood there, eyes glistening, waiting. For a moment, the room fell away. The music, the laughter, the clinking glasses, all dimmed into a soft blur. She took one hesitant step closer. "Mama," she whispered. I walked toward her slowly, every step heavy with memory. When we met halfway, she held out the flowers. Her voice cracked. "These are for you and Daddy." I took them gently, breathing in the scent, clean, fresh, nothing like regret. I saw the apology in her eyes long before she said it. "I don't expect." She started, but I stopped her. "No," I said softly, my voice barely rising above the music. "No words tonight." Tears slid down her cheeks. The choir shifted into "His eye is on the sparrow," and the notes filled the silence between us. I reached out, touched her arm, then pulled her into a slow, careful embrace. Her body trembled against mine, and for the first time in years, I felt my daughter's heartbeat close to my own. I leaned close and whispered, "Respect must come before reunion." Her shoulders shook as she nodded against my shoulder. "I understand." When I stepped back, I saw it, the same little girl who used to twirl in our living room mirror, hungry for approval, now learning the harder lesson of humility. I took her hand, not in reconciliation, but in promise, one step at a time. The choir rose louder, voices swelling into harmony as lights dimmed across the hall. The audience joined softly, the melody carrying through the rafters like a blessing. I looked out at the crowd, then up toward the banner bearing Robert's name. The hall lights gleamed brighter, reflecting off every frame, every face, every scar we'd all chosen to turn into strength. And for the first time in a long time, it truly was well with my soul.